We only have emergency lighting today. Pazuzu cut the power because he says he wasn't involved with the Exorcist Believer at all. It was in fact a different, far lamer demon named Lamashtu. Well, the joke's on him. Because I don't care. Oh, come on. Now, if you watch my review of The Exorcist Believer, you might guess that I've got some familiarity with that franchise. Today's topic is Five Nights at Freddy's, one that I have a surface-level knowledge of. I played the original game years ago when it first exploded in popularity and created its own genre of YouTuber that screams in reaction to jump scares. While I appreciated the game's novelty, I understood even then that it just wasn't my type of horror game. I do, however, respect Scott Cawthon's hustle in luring the shit out of it afterward. He added more vocab words than one could ever expect from such a property, and it's about the only thing I respect about Scott Cawthon, to be honest with you. But that's a tale for another day. Now, over time, I did pick up on some of those vocab words and proper nouns through, well, osmosis mostly, but ultimately, what I know for certain about Five Nights at Freddy's is that it combines three of my favorite things: pizza parlors, mascot horror, and children in peril. Pause for effect. Let that last statement hang. Cut to trailer.
Hi, this is Mike. I was just calling to see if that job that you offered was still available.
Yes.
It only made sense that FNAF would get its own movie. That was the only medium left for it. And I anticipated it would be soft on all of the lore that came after the first game, and I'm okay with that. This is going to be the most accessible the franchise will be for a new audience outside of just playing all the games for yourself. And why would anybody ever want to do something like that?
Millions disagree.
The film stars Josh Hutcherson. He has a recognizable enough face to get asses in the seats, but is still cheap enough for Blumhouse not to blow its budget on a major star. Trapped in a pizza parlor with Josh Hutcherson. Watch out, there make-be animatronic snakes. I think it's pretty easy to go into a movie like this with low expectations. Horror purists are never big fans of PG-13 horror, and I understand why. There's less room in a PG-13 horror film for gore or intense dread because you're making something for a younger audience, but I don't discount that entirely. You see, even as a young horror fan, you gotta start somewhere, right? I mean, for example, horror-loving cherry got popped by a PG-13 horror film called Signs. Oh! Pop cherries is a perfect metaphor to use when talking about how horror for children is okay, actually. This review now inexplicably rated R. But the point I'm making is that PG-13 popcorn horror still has a place, and it can still serve a good purpose. And I think there's a benefit to bringing younger fans in with a franchise that they're familiar with. It could work as a good jumping off point to get them into more interesting horror later in their lives. So I went into this movie with at least a hint of positivity. And it was really ill-placed because this movie fucking sucks. Why is that? Well, spoilers lie ahead. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say that it sucks. Sucks is strong. Don't get me wrong, it isn't anything nearing what I would call good, but it's not awful either. If anything, I would say it's comprehensible. And that might sound like a backhanded compliment, and it is, but I feel it's appropriate. I expected this movie to be light on lore, and it was. Game lore, anyway. Its own internal lore is a little convoluted, kind of messy, but never at any point did I feel like I was watching something I would never have any hope of understanding without a PhD in Fazbearology. No plot point felt like it was solely a wink, nod, or nudge to any of the games, or something you would have had to have read any of the books in order to understand. It's pretty simple stuff. William Afton is a bad man, he kills kids, and he puts their bodies in animatronic puppets and influences their souls into killing hapless security guards. As one does. Clearly, he hasn't watched as much true crime as I have, otherwise he would know that an open field is a far more effective location for hiding bodies, but I suppose when your main base of operations is a pizza arcade, you make do with what you have. You know, actually, now that I think about it, there is one thing that stood out to me as being simply a reference that I didn't understand. At first I thought it was just like a bad jump scare, and I would have just forgotten about it because like, oh, whatever, shitty jump scares happen all the time. But they did it like 3 times, and rule of threes, clearly that's of some importance. There's a bobblehead, and clearly the bobblehead is of some significance in the lore, trademark, but it's implemented in a strange way. Characters happen upon this bobblehead, and it's always met with the musical jump scare sting, and its head takes up the whole screen, and it cuts to the character, and they go, ah. What's the bobblehead? Should I care about the bobblehead? Which tormented dead child's soul is the bobblehead? And why is the bobblehead such a bad jump scare also? Like, is that a reference as well? Is it shit in the game as well? Because it's like, I already hate non-diegetic jump scares as it is, because I think they're incredibly lame. And like, even if you want to discuss other lame jump scares, like, for example, the jump scare where a cat does something, makes a loud noise, and people go, ah, like, that's lame too, and it's ubiquity. But at least I understand the cat jump scare. Like, I get that one. Like, I understand the mechanics of the cat jump scare. Because if you're a character walking through your house like this, and you're on edge, as somebody who's walking like this would be, if you're on edge and you're walking through your house and a cat knocks some shit off a shelf, I at least would understand a character having a reaction to that. Because it's something tangible that is happening in the world they interact with. The bobblehead is just something that the characters happen upon. Like, it's in a locker, and Josh Hutcherson opens up the locker, and then there's the musical sting, and the bobblehead's face takes up the whole screen, and Josh Hutcherson goes, bah! But then it cuts back to the bobblehead, and it's just like a tiny little bobblehead. It's like yay big. Why is the film communicating that he's being attacked in the face by this thing? Like, that's the language that's being used when it's not moving, it's not that big, it's not massive nor scary, it's no bigger than a can of Dr. Pepper. And I hope this discussion really hammers home just how much of a nothing movie this was, where 2 of my main talking points are that I could comprehend what happened in it, and there's a jump scare that I thought was kinda shit, but I let pass because it's clearly a deep cut for the fans. But what else is there to talk about? I suppose I could mention that Matt Pat showed up, and he said the word theory, and I cringed so deep within my own soul that you could put my body into an animatronic. Look out, Springtrap, here comes Chris Trap. This movie really is disappointing, though. I think in order for a film like it to work, you really gotta sell it. You gotta have actors and crew that are game to do something fun, because these lumbering, cumbersome animatronics are just inherently silly. You should have a good time with it. I mean, clearly Matthew Lillard is. I thought he was great as William Afton. For all 3 minutes he's in the movie, he's clearly having the most fun. And Josh Hutcherson, meanwhile, looks bored out of his fucking skull. He just looks so disinterested, like he's above this stupid movie for babies, which is interesting because that didn't stop him from giving it his all in the Hunger Games films. Even in the moments where he's emoting more, it just feels forced, like he didn't really care. And it's a shame because the movie spends a lot of time with him. In this movie, Josh Hutcherson plays the main character, Mike. He has a traumatic, tragic backstory. You see, his little brother got kidnapped by a mysterious person, and we don't know who it was. William Afton. Obviously it was William Afton. There's 3 characters in the whole movie. Who the fuck else would it be? William Afton took time out of his busy day shoving dead kids into an animatronic duck suit to make a trip to the campground so he could snatch another. That's dedication. And child Mike let all of this go down, so now adult Mike is intentionally lucid dreaming the nightmare of his little brother being kidnapped over and over so he could possibly pick up on any extraneous details to help him figure out who is responsible. Because as we all know, dreams are coherent, exact recreations of actual crime scenes. Subconscious does nothing to fill in the blanks. which he should have realized when all them little kids showed up out of nowhere. Especially the one with the hook for a hand, who started to cut him into ribbons in his dream. You know, this one might be a little spicy, but... fuck it. The kid that got put into Foxy, the one who's slicing people up with his own wrist-mounted scimitar, I'm not exactly sure old Billy Afton had to do a whole lot of nudging to get that kid to start his own kill streak, if you're catching my drift. I'm not advocating for him to be killed. I'm just saying, you know, maybe he shouldn't have been out in public. At the very least, keep him out of the sky tubes. Those things are already claustrophobic, and I would hate it if I was crawling over viscera on top of it. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, so Mike gets to spend most of the movie asleep. Lucky. All the while trying to retain custody of the little sister he has but doesn't care about because she has plot-dependent movie-branded autism. Just add water and your autistic characters can do whatever the plot needs them to do because autism means that your brain only works when it's convenient for the story. Just don't call it autism though, otherwise all those gross autistic people will yell at us and say that we're misrepresenting them. Ugh. Yeah, I gotta say, as a non-fan, this movie's done precious little to convince me to play the other games in the franchise or read any of the books. I think I'll be content to do as I've been doing with this series, obtaining little bits of information like they were phytoplankton out at sea and I was a bottom-feeding crab. Bite of 87. You know, I'm almost ashamed to admit this, but I was kind of hoping the movie wouldn't take place over the course of 5 nights. Wouldn't that have just been, it's so petty. It's so petty, but I always root for the funniest outcomes. And for them to miss that small but significant detail, it just would have been a premium cut Wagyu A5 beef on the filmmaker's part. But fret not, fans, or Fred not. They fulfilled their one job. It took place over the course of 5 nights, and it had Freddy. Well, I suppose that's 2 jobs. Oh well. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Do all that algorithm stuff. If you want to support my struggle, head on over to Patreon and get yourself some perks. More stuff is coming. I believe that's what I said in the script. Yes, more stuff is coming, and I hope you look forward to it. Support me if you can, love me if you must, and have a great rest of your day.